Greetings, wrestling fans of the world. Welcome to the Flying Bombcast, where each and every week we bring you the finest analysis of New Japan Pro Wrestling on this side of the Pacific and the Atlantic too. Hailing from sunny and stormy Fort Lauderdale, Florida, I'm your host, Zachary Randall, and with me, the white meat babyface, now hailing from Erie, PA, Mad Matt Thompson. Maddie, how you doing? How are you handling post-G1 depression okay?
I'm doing okay with it so far. Things could be a lot worse. We could have had like a Jay White victory or something along those lines. So, handling it all right.
So this has been an intense month of wrestling. This is the first time that we have watched the entire thing pretty much live. I didn't watch quite every match, but I'd say I watched like 90-95% of them. This is our third show in a row about it. Been kind of cool coming back to the show this way. It's actually like really awesome to be talking about wrestling like this again. I think I said this last week and maybe even the week before. I mean, we're going to dig into this in a minute. I think this is the best that pro wrestling has ever been. And for me, it certainly is the best that it's ever been, the most that I've enjoyed it in my decades on this earth. I don't know how you feel about it, Maddie.
Yeah, it's almost overwhelming, just the quantity and quality, like every other night or, 4 or 5 nights a week, just these tremendous matches. You can almost count on 1 or 2 a night to just blow you away. Unlike anything I could ever even imagine as a wrestling fan. So it's tremendous.
Now the downside about that is, and this is, not that much of a downside, is that there is an element of saturation. So you have all these 4 1/4, 4.5, 5-star matches, and then a 3.5-star match might escape your attention when on another card that would be like, holy shit, that was an awesome match. It's hardly the worst thing in the world, but there definitely can be some matches getting lost. But let's enjoy this while we can. Hopefully New Japan is this good for the foreseeable future, but one day it won't be, and we will be we'll be those grumpy guys on Twitter that get mad when somebody else likes a different kind of wrestling.
It's insane that they've been able to sustain this quality for the last, I've been watching it solidly for 3.5, 4 years now, and if anything, it's just continuing to exceed previous years. It's just crazy that they've kept it at such a high level for as long as they have, with all the talent in and out, and it's remarkable.
So, Maddie, quick question for you.
Okay, shoot.
Are you having a beer tonight, or am I drinking solo?
I'm still working on the Citra Live, the Southern Tier Pale Ale.
Very nice. So I've got a from New Belgium. It's like a honey orange thing going on here. It's nice. It's pretty smooth. It's got a good flavor to it. It's a triple, I believe. I should have paid more attention to the bottle when I cracked it open a little bit ago. And once I wrap that up, I've got a Rogue Dead Guy sitting here on the desk, and if need be, we'll take a little break mid-show, and I'll head downstairs. I've got a Dark Saison sitting in the freezer. So this is going to be a good night, good day all around. Lots of good wrestling, good beer, and sitting here chatting it up with a good friend.
Yeah, it's a great way to cap off an awesome weekend, for sure.
So, before we jump into talking about the amazing end of this tournament, Maddie, it's time for the stupid fucking tweet of the week.
All right, let's do it to it.
So it's like, coming into the show, I kind of think that maybe there's not going to be a stupid tweet this week, because I've been staying off of Twitter to kind of keep away from spoilers, and then, work has been busy, and, I'm planning this trip to Amsterdam, so I'm just, I'm crazy busy. But, this weekend I was kind of, lazing around and browsing through Twitter, and Brandy Rhodes, the wife of Cody, who is objectively is smoking hot, right?
Yeah, I think that's pretty much. Yeah, no, not argument that can be made there either way.
Yeah. And I would say probably objectively one of the hottest women in the world, but it's not everybody's taste. So Brandy posted this really cute looped gif of herself in a bikini, looking just really fine and really cute, and just a phenomenally attractive woman. Takes very good care of herself and has got some good genes too. So this guy, and I'm not gonna ever name names because I don't really want to give these people attention, and I don't generally want to shame people. But this guy is sort of for the lack of a better term, a fat, dumpy white Southerner, from kind of what I can tell from his picture. And he responds to Brandy's picture and says, "Nice, but Tennille Dashwood is much prettier and sexier to me." Brandy responds, "And my husband Cody Rhodes is much handsomer and sexier than you are to me. Now we've all shared our feelings," and then the little shrugging woman emoji, which is a great response, and a classy one too. But here, okay, so a couple things about this. Firstly, so he says this kind of not cool thing to Brandy, and I'll get back to that in a second. But this guy, within a few hours of that post, had made a post on Twitter where he's kind of complaining about his life, and he basically says, and I'm not quoting this exactly because there's words missing and shit in here, but basically, if you have nothing positive to say, I will get it out of the way now. Fuck you. So think about that for a second. He told Brandy that another female wrestler is way hotter than her, but he's very concerned about everybody, being positive and respecting his feelings.
I don't have the words. Just, yeah, it's way contradictory and way immature, and just sit down.
So what I want to say about this, get up on my pedestal here for a second. I'm pulling my pedestal, my soapbox out. I'm stepping up on my soapbox. I don't know what it would take for me to say that to a woman and be like, you know what, you're really hot, but I find girl X to be way prettier and hotter. And I cannot imagine the scenario in which I would say that to someone.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling, really. I don't know what kind of complex you have to have, or what kind of false sense of self-importance you would have to possess to, compel you to do something like that.
Because Brandy
silly.
clearly was needing this guy's validation.
I'm sure she seeks it daily. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what we're not getting behind the scenes. And I mean, again, I don't want to sit here and say some shit about somebody's looks, but especially you shouldn't say that to someone anyway. But then to say that to someone that is just like attractiveness wise is so out of your solar system. It's I don't know, man. Okay, so we spent enough time talking. You want to add anything to that? I don't know. I don't want to give this any more airtime.
Yeah, it's just one of those baffling, things that just some guys just feel like they have the right, or I don't know what compels them to do it. It baffles my mind.
There is a little bit of a sense of entitlement there that they like, or sort of owed the ability to say that, and then have it acknowledged and treated with some sort of dignity, for the lack of a better word.
Yeah, they deserve nothing.
So before we jump into talking about the final few nights of G1, we mentioned this last week. I wanted to mention again early on in the show. I wanted to talk about our plans a little bit for post G1. We want to keep shows coming out, but there's really nothing of note happening in New Japan until the first major Destruction show, which is September 15th. So we're basically going to do Dog Days of G1 series where we're going to go back and do sort of alternate commentary on some older matches. I'm actually going to be gone for part of that. So a couple of those shows might be Maddie solo, but I might be able to do a couple of those, one or two of those with him, but we'll see. Once those are wrapped, we'll be back on, doing a weekly show while we're able to do so, or at least while there's content for us to do so. And if anybody out there has ideas for what they would like us to do during the off weeks for New Japan, because I don't really want to cover like the Lionsgate shows or the actual just like the off house shows. I don't think there's much value in that. So if you like the idea of doing like an alternate commentary, or if you like us reviewing matches like we used to do early on in the series, by all means let us know. Or if you would like to hear Matt and I do an a cappella version of Slayer's Raining Blood, maybe that's a possibility too.
South of Heaven would be my preference, but that's neither here nor there.
All right.
Yeah, we could also do stuff like just profiles of feuds and or wrestlers and things like that. A little bit more broader scope of just historical stuff. We're pretty flexible, pretty open to ideas. So, yeah, any input would be appreciated for sure.
And actually, here's another thing to think about too. We've obviously always focused this show on New Japan because we're big fans of New Japan. If you would be interested in hearing anything from any other Japanese promotions, let us know and we can figure out if we can work it in. An interesting idea is if people were interested in hearing retro stuff is to do some OG All Japan heavyweight stuff from the Misawa and those guys era. I can't forgetting names.
Kobashi, Kawada.
Yeah, and Saruda. And Tenryu, Taui. Yeah, so let us know. I actually do want to talk about that stuff sometime because that's the stuff that actually initially got me into Japanese wrestling, and Misawa was my my favorite wrestler for quite some time.
Yeah, and it would be a first for me, so I would appreciate the ability to go back and do that as well. And I just want to bring up, kind of just going off on a tangent real quick. There's a great, they have a web store, and there's also a Instagram handle called Pure Resu Travel. They did the shirt with the Kishin Liger Great Muta from that match, and it looks like a black metal shirt damn near because it's all in black and white. And they're both all painted up, and they got the mist, and it's a really badass shirt. They made a shirt about Razor Ramon Hardgay. And they're like showing clips from the Hustle promotion and his matches with like Yingling and stuff, and all that stuff's really fascinating to me. I'd love to even just dig into something like that, just something totally offbeat and just a big departure from what we've been doing so far. I think that'd be pretty interesting. What do you think with that?
I'm down for anything. It's one of those things where we like to talk about wrestling. And we've been talking about wrestling pretty much as long as we've been able to communicate on a regular basis, which has been, I don't know, man, since you were a teenager.
Yeah, probably a solid 15 years or so, I'd say.
Yeah, I was actually remember, so anybody that's new to the show, so, Matt and I are cousins. On my mom's side of the family, his dad's side of the family, his dad is one of my mom's much younger siblings. And then my dad and his dad were like very, very close too. They were like in a band together and everything. And they actually helped raise him a little bit when he was younger. And then when Matt was a baby, him and his family lived with me and my family for a while. So, it's we're family, but there's a really tight connections there. So our beloved grandmother, who passed away a couple years ago, who was describing her kindly was salty. Is that a fair term, Maddie? Salty?
Yeah, very grizzly. It's kind of odd for such a tiny woman.
Yeah, she was
to call her that, but she's very, very much a spitfire.
She was lucky.
Very brassy old broad.
Yeah. And the last time I saw her was actually which was actually like a year and a half before she passed. She didn't even weigh. She's lucky if she weighed 80 pounds again, and she probably wasn't even 5 feet tall anymore. And especially like for me to go up and give her a hug, and I compared to like, so we're wrestling fans, so it's like you can't compare me to a wrestler and call me a giant, but kind of compared to like normal everyday people, I'm like a really fucking big dude. Like, tall and broad across the shoulders and kind of barrel chested. And then, basically like when I would be sitting down, she would be, maybe be like just a few inches taller than me. She could basically just walk up to me and like give me a peck on the cheek while I was sitting down without bending over that much. So anyway, salty old woman salty old woman was being salty. I remember Matt and his family are visiting once, and she bitched about anything and everything, and she's like, "Why, Matthew, he just talks about wrestling and football." So,
Yeah.
so do I. And so that's the thing, man. So here we are. Probably 20 years later or whatever. And Maddie and I are still talking about wrestling and football.
Yeah, it's that time of year. I'm really excited about it.
You checked out the new Madden yet?
I have not. I have been scouring everybody's Twitter feed for the codes, and I've been doing the retweet thing, trying to get my hands on the copy. But alas, I am quite broke at the moment. So unless it ends up becoming the point that I get gifted or win a prize version of it, then I probably won't end up getting it for a while.
I saw you tweeting Johnny G. Let me check my let me check my Best Buy account. I may have some certificates on there. I got to check and see, and then I get like 20% discount on new games. I might just shoot you a copy of that because it's really good from what I've played so far. I've been just playing the hell out of the Ultimate Team mode, which I've always liked, and they've actually given like some pretty significant changes this year that I'm liking. And my defense right now is just like is sick. I've got like Reggie White and Michael Strahan as my defensive ends. I've got
that's absolutely sick.
I got Rod Woodson as one of my corners. Ted Hendricks, OG guy that played for the Raiders and the Colts, is one of my outside linebackers. Yeah, and unfortunately, I'm not quite as good with football as I used to be, but I've got some other like really badass modern guys on my defense. And then on my offense, I've actually got two quarterbacks. I've got both Cam and Andrew Luck as my QBs. I've got Jay Ajayi as my running back, who is fucking amazing. I've got Antonio Brown, Keenan Allen, T.Y. Hilton, Tyreek Hill as my wide receivers.
Yeah, that's pretty solid. I'm really looking forward to getting on the fantasy this year. I had a pretty decent year last year, just by virtue of working that waiver wire, because I feel like I drafted a pretty crappy team, but by the end of the season I'd come back around. So I'm looking forward to hustling my way through that again this year. It's always a blast. It gives you another reason to watch the games too, as opposed to just having no interest in a team. You have a player that's on your fantasy team and you want to see him succeed, so it adds a little vested interest in an otherwise boring game on a Sunday. So it's pretty cool.
It's interesting. It's one of those things that you'll see like sports journalists hand-wringing about in articles that basically complaining about fantasy, where it's like, well, people don't cheer for just one team anymore because of and like, dude, fucking let people cheer how they want to cheer. If I want to cheer for fucking the tight end like say I want to cheer for the Packers this week because of Jimmy Graham, and I know I'm really hoping that Aaron Rodgers is going to like throw 15 passes his way and Jimmy catches 10 of them for 3 touchdowns and 150 yards. Dude, I'm watching the game and I'm into it. I have a vested interest in it, but that's not. I guess that's not traditional enough fandom for some people. God forbid one enjoys the sport the way that they choose.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously a huge Packers fan, and I've also taken a keen interest in the Browns, although they suck. But those are the only two games I'd give a care about if it weren't for fantasy. So it just makes other things a little bit more enticing.
So now that you're officially a Pennsylvania resident, are you going to switch your alliances to the east there a little bit?
No, God, no. I grew up with my grandparents being Steelers fans, and they're just like the epitome of fair weather fans, and I think that's exactly why I ended up switching allegiances there to the Browns, because the minute like Roethlisberger gets hurt or they have a sub 500 record, they just completely get all mopey and just turn off from their fandom in general. So that's my main reason. Like for example, I went to college and one of my buddies was like shaking his bedpost because Brandon Whedon was leading a potentially game-winning drive, and of course he probably like threw a pick or fumbled, but I was like, this is something I can get behind here. Like, this dude is so enthusiastic about this awful team.
And a team apart from a team that has just plain not been good since the franchise came back. Is your mom still a big Steelers fan?
Yes, indeed.
Okay, because whenever she pops up on Facebook, I always see that like her Facebook profile picture is a Steelers logo.
Typically, yeah. And I don't have a whole lot to say about that. I try to keep it to myself.
Yeah, you gotta.
There was a while though where my grandma was she was picking on me, calling Johnny Manziel Johnny Cleveland as opposed to Johnny Football, because she knew that would get a big rise out of me.
And honestly, Gargano could also be Johnny Cleveland in addition to Johnny Wrestling.
Yeah, that feels a lot more apropos.
You know what? I bet Johnny Wrestling could also be a Johnny Football. I bet that motherfucker can throw a football like 80 yards.
If not, I'm sure he'd probably run a pretty good slant route. He'd be like, I imagine him being like Danny Amendola.
I was gonna say he's like an Amendola or Welker or an Edelman or something, right? He's your slot receiver that's gonna catch like 140 passes in a season, dude. At this point, like Gargano, I would just basically think anything that you could give him, he would just probably be awesome at. It's be like Johnny, you want us to go over to the UK and sort out this Brexit shit? Cool. Can you negotiate peace in the Middle East? Okay, cool. That big garbage heap floating out in the ocean. Can you figure out a solution? Shit, it's already gone.
They could probably join the Justice League and be a productive member.
Or the Avengers, because at that Chicago takeover, he came out dressed as Captain America. Yeah,
that's pretty epic.
And I just, man, especially being like ringside for it, I popped so hard seeing him. Like, holy fuck, he's dressed as Captain America.
Yeah, they have fun with the takeover shows. Not a whole lot of pomp and circumstance with the usual NXT show, but when they pull it out on the special occasions, it really makes it feel special.
And even when they do, and even when they kind of amp that shit up, it's still understated in a good way.
Yeah, it's not as extravagant as like a big WWE pay-per-view.
I appreciate that. I'm actually going to be, not that I know that I'm missing that much, I'm actually going to be probably standing in the airport waiting to board a flight to Amsterdam on SummerSlam Sunday. So, and unfortunately, I will not be going to All In, trying to figure out what to do with my tickets because of some work-related stuff. So I will actually be sitting in Amsterdam while All In is happening. There's much worse places for me to be.
True. It's always been an intriguing locale for me.
Yeah, I was checking out the hotel I'm going to be staying at, and I'm just sort of like, I'm seeing what's nearby, and I'm like, huh, I'm gonna have a good time. And don't take the insinuation to be like I'm gonna be smoking weed and fucking prostitutes. It's just like literally all the cool shit's like in the center of Amsterdam. So
That's awesome. Yeah, we'll have to figure out what we're gonna do as far as covering Holland as well. That might be a topic worth bringing up on one of our shows.
So if you can wait until the day after Labor Day, we can actually do an all-in show.
That would work.
Yeah, because I get back from Amsterdam on Labor Day.
Okay. Yeah, we can even wait till that Sunday, the following Sunday, to do it. That would be fine with me.
So I just cracked another beer. It's a Dead Guy Ale from Rogue. Rogue Beer presents Dead Guy Ale for when you want a dead guy in your mouth.
That's a solid classic. There was a little Tex-Mex joint that used to serve that quite prominently during their time. So they're no longer open, sadly. But when they were, I'd frequent there often.
So I hadn't had it in a while. This used to be a regular of mine when I first got back into craft beer, probably nearly a decade ago. And I'd sort of moved on to other stuff, and I was stocking up on beer yesterday because, goddamn, I wasn't going to do the G1 final show without having some alcohol. And I was looking at so I wanted to get some stuff that was cold so I could crack one when I got home, and they had sixers of Dead Guy cans there in the fridge. The Total Wine in glorious Coral Springs, Florida. Little shout out to you guys. And there's something about me that, and this is the redneck in me, that I just love popping open a can of beer. Now, mind you, I pour it into a pint glass, but I just still love that just to pop in the can. It's sort of like, yeah, should be sitting on the porch with my old man right now. Of course, he'd be drinking a Budweiser, and then it just ruins the whole thing. But anyway.
It's very Hank Hill of you.
Yeah, I get the sentimental sort. Ooh, that's a good beer. I'm liking that. I let it set out for a little bit, so it's getting closer to room. Not quite room temperature, but a little warmer. Flavor comes out a little bit more. Maddie, you ready to talk about some New Japan?
Absolutely.
I know it was a little bit of a tangent there, but I have started describing the show as a free-form stream of consciousness affair, and I think that's fairly right. And if anybody listening to the show has spent any time with me in person, that's basically what every conversation is like.
Yeah, I would describe it as just conversational, but yeah, that's also a little bit more in-depth way to say it. I can't disagree.
So we're jumping in to night 16. This is from August 8th. This is the next to last night of B Block action. This is at the Yokohama Cultural Gymnasium. I'm going to run through the first couple matches here real quick and then get to the important shit. Firstly, we have Juice and Ishii. Has been a rough tournament for Juice. He lost a bunch, and he lost again here. Of course, he's wrestling Ishii, and well, it's fucking Ishii. What are you going to do?
Yeah, my favorite thing, the thing that's probably going to stick out to me about this match was when Juice hit the left hand of God, and Ishii just crumbled. That was like one of the best sells of a punch I've ever seen in a wrestling match.
When Ishii sells, because part of Ishii's thing is that he doesn't sell. When Ishii sells, it is just so fucking phenomenal.
It is. Like, this reminded me of somebody getting clobbered with a KO punch or a KO kick in an MMA match.
Yeah, I've sort of been, I don't know why boxing has been on my brain lately, but it has been. And I've been thinking about like prime era Mike Tyson and like what it was like when he would clock somebody. And sometimes you get hit and you just get knocked off your feet, right? And you get back up. But then there's the times that you get hit and you're just like fucking done.
Yeah, like when a guy just crumbles and like they potentially could roll in that. Like I was thinking of like Gonzaga and Crow Cop, where Crow Cop like legit broke his ankle because it just all his weight just collapsed on top of him.
There you go. So
That's what that Cell from Ishii reminds me of. So that's for you to be able to pull that off in a wrestling match as a Cell, like that's pretty amazing acting right there.
So anyway, so Ishii goes over with a Enziguri and the Brainbuster. Moving on, Goto and Zack Sabre Jr. Both of these guys, I think, had a hell of a tournament. We're obviously going to talk about them some more. ZSJ goes over here. He actually hit a European clutch, reversing the GTR. Again, Sabre's counters are the best in the business. It's like I said last week, you're playing like No Mercy against somebody, and you're up against this like smartass that can basically counter everything that you do, and then that's all they do the whole match is just counter your moves into something else.
That would be very frustrating if you were like playing that game on extra hard mode or whatever, and you're playing like Ken Shamrock or something, because he was like a unlockable character in that game, and he was really sick. So it's probably something along those lines.
So in this tournament, Sabre has beaten both Juice and Goto. So 2 of the secondary singles titles he is in line for shots against.
Yeah, and he's been rather vocal about wanting to take both of those titles. He wants to go in the United States next time they go to Long Beach at the end of September, and that's when he wants to beat Juice. And he also, I think he's looking for one of the Destruction shows to be his challenge against Goto. So he wants them both, in the very near future, and he's probably looking to be a belt collector. So we'll see how that works out for him.
Which could be a cool gimmick for him. He's held single titles in other promotions, but he has not held it like a major singles title. He hasn't held a singles title at all in New Japan, and I think it's coming up on time for him to have one.
Yeah, I'd be an advocate for it. He's tremendous. I think you have to look no further than the New Japan Cup from this year to see what he's capable of against top guys and just making them look humiliated. Like it's crazy. So and we'll talk later on about potential feuds coming out of that, so coming out of the booking from the G1, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how the booking goes forward with ZSJ and others.
Agreed. Up next, we have Kota Ibushi and Tama Tonga. This is a big match for Kota to basically keep up with Omega and Naito and have a shot at winning B Block. More Tongan fuckery here. I don't even. I'm gonna get to this part of a story, but I don't even. You go ahead, because I don't want to talk about this.
Yeah. The main thing I took from this was watching the post-fight press conference interview afterwards, and just seeing Ibushi being totally despondent when he realizes that like his only way to continue on in the tournament and potentially win the block is that he needs Omega to lose the match against Yano, just immediately following this match here. And you can just tell that as hard as this guy worked, that's the last thing he wants is for Omega to lose, because that's his life partner, as they've both stated about each other. So yeah.
Kenny gets laid out in this. Tama goes over. Kenny's laid out from a power bomb, and he's still laid out. And Toru Yano comes out for the next match, and kind of does the Money in the Bank briefcase thing, where he just basically tries to cover him right away. Tongan running again, and gun stun on both Yano and Omega.
Tonga pulls Yano on top of Omega for the 3 count. For God knows why.
I mean, this is not why we watch New Japan, and I'm not for sure where they're going with this. You and I are both fans of God, but they're tag team guys. They're kind of mid card tag team guys, and they're not like top dudes as single acts, especially not Loa. Fale is an upper mid card guy because he's sort of like the monster on the roster. But I don't know where the fuck they're going with this because these aren't like top guys.
Yeah, it really it beats me. It's beyond me. I don't.
But we're gonna talk about that more later. Main event for the night is Tetsuya Naito versus Sonata.
Yeah, this was a wild match. I don't even really know where to start with it. There's lots of brawling, lots of it's not even really like a cordial type of fight like you would expect from two stablemates. I mean, they both end up spitting right at each other's faces, and they go hard as hell. So it's very interesting because there's been teases of dissension this whole time. Sonata's always kind of seemed like he's been off on his own head or something. When with the other LIJ guys. So it's kind of an interesting little twist to all of this.
I talked about this last week, and I want to bring this up again because this is just something I disagree with. I hear all the time about how Sonata doesn't really have any charisma, and it's like, dude, the guy is mad over. I mean, the crowd loves him. He's an amazing wrestler. He's not Naito, and he's not Hiromu. And then he doesn't have sort of the gimmick like Evil does, but he's got his place in LIJ, and I actually think the stoic thing works for him. You've got this stoic guy that's like this freaky talented wrestler, and he can do all the high spot stuff too, but when it comes down to it, he can also fucking ground you in submissions and take you out that way.
Yeah, and it doesn't seem like it's out of character for him to act that way. It doesn't seem like it's put on. It seems like it's pretty, authentic to who this guy is. Like there's certain people who you really couldn't imagine Hiromu trying to do a stoic thing. Like that would just be so, so not fitting of that character. So for him, it seems natural.
Yeah.
And, he just lets his talent speak for him. Like there's nothing wrong with that.
Hiromu needs to be gross and creepy, and then do like crazy dives, and then Sonata needs to be stoic guy with cool hair.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. I don't see what would be the issue.
So Naito goes over here, hits the Destino as a counter to the Skull End. The rest of LIJ minus Hiromu come down after the match. Evil carrying Hiromu's jacket. And we have a united front out of LIJ.
Yeah, not what I expected. And I think there's still lots of, if you use the old cliche, lots of unfinished business. But for now, it seems like they're, at least going to keep it together for the time being. Little détente, if you will.
Yeah. One thing that you can say about Ghetto's booking is that he's willing to let a storyline play out for like a couple years.
Yeah, he's really fond of like a slow burn type of approach, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's not. It's a big contrast to the hot shotting that you see in American stuff. So, I think it's a nice change of pace, if nothing else.
So this sets up. You got a three-way. What is it? You have. Well, you don't have a three. No, so you have Naito with 12, Kenny with 12, Kota with 10, right?
Yeah.
And what's going to happen is is on the final night, Naito wins, and you get a Kenny or Kota draw. Naito goes to the finals. Kenny wins, he goes to the finals. Kota wins, he goes to the finals.
Yeah, lots at stake.
So let's move on to night 17, the final night of A block action. This is in Budokan in Tokyo. This is the same Budokan that the famous Cheap Trick live album was made at, and this was the major building for All Japan back in the day.
Yeah, very famously associated with All Japan and Noah throughout the years.
So first match, we're going to go through the undercard pretty quickly. Togi Makabe and Michael Elgin. This was kind of a big deal for Elgin because he'd always wanted to wrestle in Budokan, and he got to.
Against the former G1 champ, against the former IWGP champ, like it's a big thing to check off the resume for sure.
Both of these guys had solid tournaments. This is probably one of the last G1s, I would think, for Makabe, but there's definitely some guys that could move up into that spot, but we'll see. I don't know if they'll... I mean, they might, because he's a former world champ, because you kind of saw the send-off they gave Nagata last year, and I would assume that they might do a similar thing for Makabe. I had actually last year sort of predicted a big year for Elgin, and he didn't have one, and this was sort of a so-so year too. He also had a injured arm. Seems like Elgin's probably at his ceiling in New Japan, but I don't know what you think.
I think that there's always potential for him to make a little climb, but I don't think it's going to be anytime in the near future. I think that they got their top mix pretty well fleshed out, and it's going to probably be a while before he can really step up. Maybe mid-card tag thing might be a good place for him. Maybe if they can bring Cobb in for more dates, they can keep teaming.
Oh, shit, dude. That would be... See those two with... Actually, you know what? Fun match, fun little feud. Do Cobb and Big Mike against the Bucks.
Yeah, absolutely. Or, you could even see like Hangman and Chase Owens kind of furthering, like they tag together on the undercard a lot for this tour. And they could have a nice little feud as well. Kind of, step out, do their own thing, and, make a big splash as far as just output of good work and, make a name for themselves that way.
It's a quick question, Matty. I don't want to sidetrack this too much. Do you think Big Mike would have a spot in, and I mean by a spot, I mean a good spot in NXT?
I don't see why not, yeah. He'd fit well against a lot of those guys. I feel like he'd be a great straight man for Velveteen Dream, that's for sure.
Or imagine Big Mike and Keith Lee. I know you haven't watched a lot of Keith Lee, but you need to.
I will. I'll have to keep my eyes peeled. I know that he debuted on NXT last week, so I'll have to keep my eyes open.
Put it this way, Keith Lee is going to be the franchise.
Okay. I would take your word on that. For the time being.
Yeah, you will see. All right, so we have Yoshihashi and Hangman Page. Yoshi goes over here. I guess they kind of like to keep these guys at sort of like an even number of points. Good tournament for Hangman. I feel like it helped establish him a decent amount. The general consensus that I've heard and in my mind is that Yoshi did not have a great tournament.
No, it's just odd because he puts out some good matches. Like he and Tanahashi kind of sticks out as a good match. He and Okada sticks out as a good match, with Okada just kind of being a little bit of a bully to him. And he stated himself in the press conference afterward that he thinks that he should be reaching higher and trying to find something new. So I don't know if he's gonna move on from Chaos, if that's what that means, or if that means that he's just gonna add to his repertoire, change things up character wise. Who knows? It does feel like he is missing something, and he's gonna have to do a little soul searching, if you will.
And once we get done talking about the tournament itself, we will have a conversation about what we think is the future of chaos. Moving on to the next match, we have Bad Luck Fale and Minoru Suzuki. This was actually a good match while it lasted. It was sort of, Fale is the monster, but Suzuki doesn't quit and keeps coming forward and, does his crazy counters to different moves. But Tama Tonga runs in for the DQ.
Yeah, let me just say that I loved watching Suzuki bash Fale and choke him with the chair. Like, I was like, thank God for this comeuppance. Like, this guy and these idiots just they really need to get theirs. And for at least that little brief moment, it was so satisfying to watch.
So Suzuki, after the match, vows to destroy Bullet Club.
Yeah, he was calling the Tongans punks and bastards, and look at his typical sadistic self. But it's all the scarier when he's really out for vengeance. So it'll be interesting to see how that evolves going forward.
And by the way, I love it when Suzuki stands in the ring and is shouting, "Come on, boy."
Yeah. I love it when he's like cowering over media people backstage afterwards. He's just such a wild man. It's awesome.
He is. He's one of the best wrestlers in the world anyway, but he's also, and I'm saying this, quote unquote character. Yeah, he's one of the best wrestling characters in the world too. Never mind just like technical ability, just like the personality and presence is just like amazing.
Yeah, facial expressions, just overall presence. His words. He's very measured in his promos. He knows exactly what he's saying. He doesn't, mince words at all. So he's just fantastic.
So interesting note out of this. This is sort of a random historical / statistical note. Fale was never pinned or submitted during the tournament.
Yeah, a lot of DQs will do that for you.
And by the way, a good heel should just brag like mad about that.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they'll find the opportunity once it comes along.
Yeah, I mean, we talked last week about Tonga as a hype man for Fale in particular, and that's actually like a good shit talking thing he could do at the beginning of the matches is bringing up the unpinned, unsubmitted in the G1 climax.
Yeah, absolutely. He'd find a way to spin it into his rap that would work well.
So up next we have Jay White and Evil. Jay White, if he had won this, would have put himself at 14 points, which is just would have been a ridiculous accomplishment for him, and put him in position to actually win the tournament. That, however, is not what happened. Evil actually goes over here. We get Rocky Romero on commentary doing his best black metal voice, calling the finish of the match.
Yeah, it was an everything is evil for the ages. Up there with Milano Collection AT's calls and Evil's promos himself. So add that to the list of great everything is evil calls.
On a side note, I feel like that Milano Collection AT is just like the coolest gimmick ever. And it reminds me why I love Japanese wrestling and Japanese culture in general.
Yeah, he's even not understanding the language. He's definitely a worthwhile listen on Japanese commentary if you're into that sort of thing.
And I guess it was earlier in the tournament when Sonata and Yano wrestled, and Rocky tried to help out Yano, ended up in the Paradise Lock. Mm-hmm. And then Rocky is calling to Milano for help because apparently Milano has the key to the Paradise Lock.
Yeah, that was great. He was doing a great job of selling that peril That was pretty funny stuff.
So, anything you want to add about the Jay White Evil match?
Just I like to finish. I didn't really see it coming. I figured that Jay White was going to win with a chair shot. He was pulling off lots of really dickish, cheating basically, and I thought that was going to be the end. So a little bit of a surprise there, a bit out of nowhere with the everything is evil. That STO right out of the attempted chair shot. That was pretty cool little finish, I thought.
And to be clear, Jay White is a fucking dick.
Yeah, no question.
So wow. All right, holy shit. Main event, the final night of A block action. We have the ace of the universe, Hiroshi Tanahashi, taking on the Rainmaker and the longest reigning ever IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, Kazuchika Okada. Whoever wins this match goes to the finals.
Yeah, both guys really pulled out all the stops, and Tanahashi in particular, I thought really pulled out all the stops, pulling out lots of moves he doesn't normally use. Hitting the Styles Clash. There's all that stuff. Did he do the package pile driver in this match? I'm trying to think if that was this one or not.
It's hard to remember in these matches because they do every move.
Yeah. It was just wow.
So this was a balls to the wall match. This is really what you would expect out of these guys. So it comes down to the final few minutes, and strategically speaking, all Tana has to do is just run the clock out, and he's going to the finals. And he's still going for the win, like doing like multiple high fly flows. And then even Okada, you have done at the end of the match, knows that basically it's going to a draw, still kicking out of a pin that, frankly, a pin that doesn't matter.
Yeah, just a statement of pride for both of these guys, having feuded against each other for so long, and really just been neck and neck from the get-go, and it really could be any outcome on any night, and this is no exception to that. So really good story that they told throughout the match as far as that went. Felt like Okada was really mindful of that 30-minute time limit and was really pulling out desperation moves from the beginning. And he was trying for lots of tombstone attempts really early on before it felt like it was appropriate. So you can really see that desperation early on from him, and then at the end with Tanahashi, pulling out all the stops as well, trying to hit as many high fly flows as he could to try to pull out the victory at the very end, also out of desperation. So, both these guys really have a lot of respect for each other's game, and they put on an incredible match. Great story told in that 30-minute time frame.
It's worth noting that Tanahashi has not beaten Okada in a very, very long time.
True. Yeah, I think this second or third match of theirs in a row to go to a draw.
Well, no, because Okada beat Tana earlier this year.
That's okay. That's right. But at any rate, it's been a long time.
It was the last title defense before Okada dropped the belt to Kenny.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was a insanely good match. I mean, again, I don't think we're quite to the point yet where Tanahashi and Okada won't have a good match, but it's sort of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think how to compare it. It's almost like
the Cavs and the Warriors playing each other in 4 straight NBA finals.
I was thinking about like Austin and Foley doing main events.
Yeah, they littered the WWF pay-per-view scene during those couple of years there for sure. Mankind would do Foley would do different characters and switch it up, and just to make things interesting.
It was always weird seeing Dude Love as a heel.
Yeah, that was that Austin's first big defense?
Um, Austin had like 2 or 3 months out of WrestleMania 14 against Foley, and one of those was him as Dude Foley as Dude Love, but I don't think the whole thing was him as Dude Love.
Okay. Yeah, that's pretty interesting stuff. So yeah, this is kind of similar. You can just kind of put these guys together whenever the situation feels right, and you can guarantee that they're gonna find ways to build upon the feud that they've already made for themselves, and find a way to keep it interesting.
Yeah, I mean, the terms in terms of like constructing a match and telling a story in the ring, these are two of the best ever, and that's actually a topic we're going to dig into in a little bit. Let's move on to night 18, final night of B block action again in the legendary Budokan. We need to go there sometime.
I would dig it.
Do you have your passport?
No.
Get on that shit, dude.
I might have to.
I'm pouring a beer right now, so I don't know. I need you to talk for a second.
Okay. So yeah, it's kind of funny. You talk about the prestige of this venue, and then you open up with Toru Yano and Tama Tonga as far as the first block match goes. So kind of a little bit of irony there.
By the way, for what it's worth, Yano had an excellent tournament.
He really did. The whole notion of fair play and whether or not it was going to persist throughout the whole tournament, we saw that really didn't as things ended up coming to a close.
So this match just ends up like going to shit. Tama just like loses his shit and ends up like he's like throttling Yano, and like the refs are trying to pull him off. Like it's like Marty Asami gets tossed out of the ring. Another ref actually grabs, and I thought this was awesome. Another ref actually grabbed Tama by the hair and pulled him up off of Yano. Eventually, President Harold May runs out and sends the Tongans to the back. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. Here's how I know I'm still a fan of wrestling. I saw Yano laying there in the apron, sort of like a mess and like recovering from just getting like strangled, and I'm like mad and I'm upset and like I didn't like seeing that, and it's like, oh yeah, right, I was buying into the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's a sympathetic character, no doubt. For all the shenanigans that he pulls, he's not really an amoral guy or anything. There's no real reason to not feel the sympathy for him when he has to go through something like that. These bastards.
Yeah, we're gonna dig into Tongan fuckery more in a bit, but up next we have the flamboyant Juice Robinson taking on Hiroki Goto. Juice goes over here, wins with the Pulp Friction. Very interesting that the U.S. champ beat the Never champ, and you got ZSJ gunning for both titles. I don't know what that says for the future, but I don't know. New Japan could actually use one less title.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to them dissolving one into the other. I think it would probably be the Never into the U.S. if anything, but
the Never stuff is just weird anyway because it was never it was never what it was originally meant to be. And again, they have too many fucking titles.
Yeah. We can talk about that as far as the finals night too. So,
I mean, even with Jericho having the IC title and that not being defended, they still have too many titles.
Yeah. That's fair, especially when you think about it and you kind of have to take a second to remember who's a champion in a specific division if you haven't seen them in a while.
Like, when's the last time we saw the junior tag titles defended?
Right. Yeah, we haven't. And, you kind of have to go, is that still Roppongi 3K or is that still Suzuki-gun? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah, it's Kanemaru and Desperado.
Yeah. So, if that's the the backward steps you have to take to remind yourself it's not necessarily a good sign.
Yep. So anyway, both Juice and Goto finished with 6 points. Goto has been like a top guy in this tournament for a while. He was actually in the final against Kenny in, what was that, in 2016. You know, like point-wise, this wasn't his best tournament. But, dude, Goto had a hell of a tournament. There was a lot of good matches here, and, you know, I've openly stated before that I'm not, like, a fan of his. Like, I get that he's good. He's actually started winning me over. He won me over quite a bit in this tournament.
Yeah, I've always really respected what he's been able to do in the ring, but yeah, it's just something's lacking from a character standpoint.
Juice didn't have an awesome tournament. It seems like, and let me know what you think, Matt, that they're still trying to book him as an underdog, which is a thing that works for Juice, but I don't know that that works with Juice as a champion.
Yeah, he's holding what's essentially the second top title, you know, in the absence of the IC title. So, yeah, it's not necessarily the best fit.
They need to be careful with him because he is potentially one of their like very, very top guys. And, you know, before a lot of him was about the charisma, but he's actually upped his in-ring game significantly. So you've got a guy that, you know, can go in the ring, and we talked about this before. Juice is a really big guy, like deceptively big. When I've seen him walk by me, and like I talked about before, I'm a pretty big dude, and Juice is sort of like, I'm like, God damn, that's a big fucking guy, you know?
Yeah, Kevin Kelly put him over. I think it was in this match. He hit a big crossbody, and it's like, you know, that's like a linebacker coming off the top rope with that kind of elevation on a big ass, you know, aerial move like that.
So you got a big, good-looking, charismatic guy that can go in the ring. I mean, that's kind of traditionally been what pro wrestling's about, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, especially when he can get himself over talking like that. He's, you know, one of the best promos in all of wrestling. So he's definitely deserves it.
So up next we have Tomohiro Ishii and Sonata. Ishii goes over here. Ishii finishes with 10. Sonata finishes with 8. I don't really want to hang on this match too much. Obviously, these two are amazing and can pull it all out in the ring. Ishii beat all the champs in the tournament in this year.
Yeah, and there's a tease after the last match or after their tag match from the finals that Kenny wants to get right at Omega for that. Or Ishii wants to get rid of Omega for that title. So,
and we'll talk about that more in a little bit. Ishii finishes with 10. He had a hell of a tournament. I mean, dude, Ishii's one of the. I've heard him. I'm trying to think who it was. Maybe it was Todd Martin. I heard say that Ishii's one of the 5 best wrestlers in the world, and I don't know if I would completely agree, but Ishii is definitely in. Put it this way, he's in the top 10, which puts him in the conversation for the top 5.
Yeah, and there was I think it was an emailer on the Todd Martin show who was talking about how prior to this G1 they had heard of all the big names who were kind of crossover guys, but you know, Ishii was like a revelation to somebody who's uninitiated just because he's so amazing and so. You know, it's kind of like back in the day, 3-6 Mafia, they had an album called Most Known Unknown. It's kind of like that. Ishii is the most known unknown.
Yeah, someone I had with me at the Long Beach shows last year walked out of the second night as a really big Ishii fan.
Yeah, he's had just such tremendous matches this whole tournament. Really, you know, helped put a lot of guys over, and in the process himself as well. Just tremendous stuff.
I mean, he's legit he is one of the best guys in the world. Sonata finishes with 8. I mean, we've talked about Sonata a bunch. We'll probably talk about him some more tonight. He's an amazing worker. He is really over, and he's going to be in the main event picture in New Japan one day, unless somebody else scoops him up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Easy to imagine him as a future champ. I think Kenny Omega even said so on Twitter, or alluded to it at least.
Yeah, he made a little joking tweet about it. Can't you see? I mean, I can totally see him, Sonata, and Okada having like a really, really stiff and brutal 40-minute war.
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's got nothing but upside.
So up next, this is the first important match of the night. We have Tetsuya Naito taking on Zack Sabre Jr. So interesting note about Naito and Budokan. You want to share that, Maddie?
Yeah. Prior to this match, on one of the backstage comments, Naito talked about how he had attended. I think he said it was the second to last row, if I remember correctly. He attended a Budokan show back on June 5th of 1997, and that was the exact moment that he knew he wanted to become a wrestler. So I'm sure that this building and this match has a lot of significance for him as far as that's concerned.
I mean, it's a big building for wrestling in general, and it's a big building for rock and roll too. I look forward to the day that Northern Crown cuts their live album there.
That would be pretty dope.
Yeah, in case my regular bassist is unavailable. This is another reason that you need your that I need you to get your passport.
Mm-hmm. Well, if that's on the line, then clearly I need to get my act together.
And you need to get that bass fixed up too.
Yeah, the 5-string needs a little bit of help.
Yeah, you're definitely you're not going to be able to rock the Northern Crown shit on a 4-string. You need a 5-string.
Yeah.
I just it's one of those things where it's like I just keep tuning lower and lower as I go. And at some point I'm going to have to have somebody invent like it's not going to be like drop A or drop G or whatever. It's going to be like drop like absolute 0 or something, and I'm just going to have to like invent new strings or whatever to play it.
Yeah, it's like the size of a small pipe.
There you
go.
Like
8-inch diameter.
Yep. That's going to be a hell of an instrument right there, right? I actually
I don't know how you'd fret that, but it's if you can dream it, you can do it. Right?
You know what? Here, an interesting thing is that my personal trainer has like really been pushing me lately to start like deadlifting heavier and heavier. And if deadlifting does anything, it makes your grip way, way better.
No kidding. I never would have thought.
Well, I mean, you're holding on to, you're holding on to whatever it is you're picking up, So let's say it's, 200, 220, 240 pounds, and that's, or higher. I mean, you're holding that weight with your hands first and foremost.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So you're actually like gripping that weight with your hands, and then like, your back and your shoulders and your legs and everything got to handle it from there. But yeah, dude, like your grip has got to hold out to get that fucking bar up off the ground and hold on to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so Naito and Sabre Jr. Talk about this match a little bit.
So before we talk about the match itself, the one thing I really want to talk about is Zack Sabre Jr.'s just pure arrogance and I don't know what sort of just smugness,
contempt,
smarminess. Just his absolute disdain for Naito, for LIJ fans, and just I can't think of that. I can't count on my hands how many times ZSJ has called Naito a dickhead, and comments talking about him leading up to this match. So You could tell that ZSJ really was relishing in the opportunity to just completely ruin Naito's chances of winning this tournament. So that was a blast leading up into the match as far as the story of the match went.
I mean, these two are both amazing, both amongst the best in the world, both very, very different as wrestlers. But these styles do not clash at all.
No, and it's funny too. Like somebody can be so smarmy and so snobbish, but can really back it up and kind of be really in his own way kind of cool as well. So you really can't love him because he's so annoying and so obnoxious, but you can't really hate him either because he's so damn good. So I think that's really the essence of what makes Zack Sabre Jr. such a good heel.
Yeah,
And
the
such a
interesting
good
thing about
wrestler in
Sabre
general.
is that it's like, okay, so typically in wrestling, if you're a heel, you're not good enough to beat the babyface without cheating. That's sort of the traditional heel, right? And you shouldn't do flashy moves either because flashy moves are cool. Now, the thing is, Sabre is good enough that he can win without cheating. And his talent is, the talent sort of manifest, right? Like it's obvious, like how good this guy is. But at the same time, he's not good unless you're like a wrestling fan like us. It's not necessarily apparent that what he's doing is awesome.
Yeah, it's not flashing. It's not flashy in the way of like doing topes or anything like that, but it's flashy in the way of just his pure skill, his innovative nature and countering everything, and really just having answers to anything that anybody's gonna throw at him.
So Zach ends up going over here. He actually counters a Destino into a Zach driver, which I think it's awesome that there's a finishing move named after me. Yeah, this is a big spoiler for Naito because both guys finished the tournament with 12 points, and the tiebreakers are not in their favor.
Right. Yeah, and we'll see later on how this is the second straight time that Naito's lost to ZSJ, and there's furthering of the Lij and Suzuki-gun feud and the following night. So we'll talk about that as well.
On a side note,
and how that bodes for Naito going forward.
On a side note, there's a few moments in this match where ZSJ is countering Naito with some of the like cool rolling clutches, and those don't always look good. And Sabre's actually with a guy that can actually help him out in making those pinning combinations look good.
Yeah, and really kicking out at the last possible instant and making it look really credible as well.
All right, so holy shit, here we go. Main event, final match of Block B. The winner goes to the finals to next night to face Hiroshi Tanahashi. This is Kenny Omega, the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, the best bout machine, taking on his best friend and life partner, the Golden Star, Kota Ibushi.
Yeah, two guys who really seemed reluctant to even have this match in the first place, but the circumstances just had it work out, and this is the way that their fortunes turned out for them.
These guys have stated that they never wanted to wrestle again because one of them might die.
Yeah, and after the match, Ibushi claims to have no recollection of the match itself. Like he must have just went into a blackout or a fugue state during this entire match, apparently. So yeah, that gives you an idea of how they felt about having to have this be a necessary outcome.
So one of the things I noticed early on is you got a few times that Kenny chops Kota and then sort of stops and just sort of like almost like collapses a little bit, sort of like bends over and puts his hands on his knees because he doesn't want to be doing this.
Yeah, yeah. Really selling that idea of the reluctance for sure.
And then at some point, early on when they start trading strikes, I mean, Jesus fucking Christ, Coda hits Kenny right in the throat with one of those just ridiculous side kicks he does.
Yeah. They both brought out a level of aggression that you wouldn't really expect to happen, and really made this match interesting as it went on.
So, Coda, you look at Coda. Coda's like the ultimate baby face, right? He's got the boy band look. He's got probably like the most perfect physique in wrestling. And he always looks like he's about 10 seconds away from crying. But dude, he's a mean he's a mean, nasty motherfucker. He could use the Wasp song Mean Man as his entrance music.
And you really don't think that about him. That's not really like your impression of him when you're not watching him. At least for me.
No, I know. When he's not in the ring, that's not what he's like the popular pretty boy.
Yeah, and you think about his athleticism and, his endurance, his stamina, and things like that. You don't necessarily think of, like hitting double knees out of a standing moonsault and crushing a guy's sternum.
By the way,
but he totally goes there.
By the way, Coda needs to not do that standing moonsault double knee drop.
That looked damn vicious. That looked dangerous, honestly.
I really feel like Kenny is lucky to be alive after that.
Yeah. And another opponent who ate that move as well.
Because here's the thing. Like, I remember when when Devitt / Balor came to NXT and he's doing the coup de grace as his finish. And people were like, well, how the fuck does he do that without hurting people? And then you start actually watching it in slow-mo. He's actually hitting the ground at the same time he's stomping on them. He's actually falling backwards as he does it. So it looks good. And I think he even did it to KO once off the top of a ladder. He makes it look good, but he's not really hurting them. Dude, Coda does shit like this. There's no protection here. He's landing like with the full weight of his body. And he's like twisting. So he's adding like torque to the blow right into somebody's fucking ribs and sternum and stomach.
Yeah, and Omega did his best to brace himself for it, but still, like, there's not a whole lot you can do.
And it's worth noting, in case anybody out there doesn't know, there's internal organs right there, some really important ones.
The most important ones. Really. Other than the brain.
Right. So, I mean, I don't know. It's a little bit of some highlights from this match. Ibushi tries to do his that deadlift German, like from the second rope into the ring. Which, by the way, I just always think any like deadlift suplex just looks like crazy cool, because a lot of times suplexes, somebody's getting an assist on it. But and especially a guy like Coda, who's like ripped, but you don't think of as like a muscle guy, is deadlifting somebody. It's kind of awesome. But this is one of those moments where I'm like literally sitting there at the TV shouting, guys, stop. Dude, fucking Omega hits Ibushi with a packaged tombstone on the apron.
Yeah, that was scary. There was a lot of different things that they teased in that spot, but what they went with was probably the deadliest out of all of them. So that was pretty scary stuff.
By the way, Ibushi has like a gorgeous lariat.
Yeah, he does. And he can do it on an opponent from a standing position. Like, he doesn't need the momentum of charging at a guy to do it either. That's probably the most impressive part about it.
I think it's another impressive thing about him is him hitting that last ride power bomb. If you think about the last ride, that was Undertaker's move, and Undertaker's something of a giant. That was his him in his biker phase. So you've got this big scary guy, and but it's there's something awesome about seeing Ibushi do that move,
and adding his own, modification to it by doing it into a sit out, so it's not just the exact same move. Too really makes it his own.
It's the Doctor's last ride.
Indeed.
Well, I always just want a pin Doctor to any sit out power bomb.
Yeah, that's fair.
I'm gonna pour out a little bit of this beer on the ground from my homie Dr. Death Steve Williams. Actually, this is really expensive beer. I'm not gonna pour it on the ground.
Yeah, then they'll stink up your studio. That's no fun.
But I did a little tranquilo pose for Dr. Death.
Nice.
Who turns out Dr. Death is dead. Who knew? What how ironic, right?
Well, I mean, if you look at the course of human history, he'd probably lived a very short life. And the course of everything is just a tiny little blip.
In comparison to the life of the universe, we don't exist.
Right. So it could just be assumed that Dr. Death is in fact dead.
By the way, have you ever tried to explain to somebody that doesn't get a lot of basic concepts that that we basically don't exist? Because if you look at things on a cosmic time scale, it's not even like a blip on a chart anywhere. Like, we literally don't exist.
It's not even worth the effort. I don't have the patience. I have patience for a lot of things, but I just, at that point, I just turn my head and walk away.
So, Kenny actually kicks out of the Kamigoye. We have these guys just, I don't know, man, beating the shit out of each other. V-triggers, roundhouses to the heads, J-drillers, V-trigger to the back of the head.
There was the one spot in this match that I don't even know how you would describe it. Omega has Ibushi up, in the one-wing angel position, and then Ibushi bends backwards, almost like he's trying to...
Oh, Jesus Christ. Oh, my God. Yeah.
Yeah. And then Omega drops Ibushi on his head, kind of like a la the Rite of Passage, Hangman Page's move, but in a reverse position, and it just looks so fucking...
Oh, God,
messy.
that was fucking gross.
Yeah. And, it's kind of like... kind of similar to the Ishii Omega match where, you're watching this and you think this guy's taking so much punishment. How is he possibly gonna come back and win? But, last he ends up doing it. So it's pretty wild stuff.
So Kenny ends up setting up a avalanche one-wing angel. I don't want to see anybody taking one-wing angel from the ropes, but explain Ibushi's counter here, because this was sick too.
Yeah, Ibushi ends up getting out of it, gets up on the top rope, so he's one rope above Omega. Omega's perched on the second rope, and Ibushi jumps over Omega's head and double stomps the back of Omega's head as he's standing there. And if that's not sick enough, he follows it up with an avalanche tiger driver.
I don't like. I mean, ultimately it works, but man, those blows to the back of the head. I mean, when Kenny's such an expert at doing those V triggers to the back of the head, and if Kenny was actually landing the V triggers, his opponent would be so fucking bruised up. And he manages to land it, and he does it in such a way, he's got that thigh slap down where it sounds like a fucking shotgun blast when he hits somebody.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. But as far as the avalanche tiger driver goes, you can totally save that move for the video games. We don't need to see real humans doing that move.
Yeah, we'll save that for Fire. Which, by the way, speaking of Fire Pro, the New Japan DLC is out in 2 weeks.
Nice. Been anxiously awaiting that. That'll be awesome.
Yeah, the roster is pretty crazy, and it's actually got like a story mode, and then there's actually supposed to be some junior heavyweight DLC coming out later too.
Cool. Yeah, they talked to Juice about that, and he had talked about potentially having to buy himself a PS4 so he could play with himself. He said he was excited. He'd never been in a video game before, so he was looking forward to the opportunity to play with himself.
I'm sure Juice normally doesn't have to play with himself.
Probably not. He's probably got lots of prospects.
Sometimes you get yourself a match there on the PlayStation Network, and you got somebody to to sort of get there and grapple with, and sometimes you got to grapple yourself.
Yep. Firm little shake ski.
Pouring more beer, by the way. You probably just heard the bottle clinking against the glass. It's absolute like pro production going on up in this studio right now. But hey, you know what? I made a hopefully soon to be hit heavy metal album in here, so it's all good.
Things could be worse.
So after the Avalanche Tiger Driver, Ibushi hits an exposed knee Kamigoye on Kenny. 1, 2, 3 for the win. So we have a 4-way tie. 4 guys with 12 points. So that is Ibushi, Omega, Naito, and ZSJ, each with 12 points. Turns out Ibushi has the tiebreaker on each of those gentlemen.
Yeah, hell of a tournament for Ibushi to pull out victories on all 3 of those guys. It's quite an accomplishment and quite a way to advance to your final there.
I don't exactly know what. Actually, on a side note, before I get to that, so two of the guys that were tied for the lead in B block were 2 quarterfinalists in the Cruiserweight Classic.
Yeah, well, that's quite a way to look at it. That and going into that, those guys had to be the favorites. There's no way they weren't.
Yes, actually, Saber was my pick going into that.
Yeah, and Ibushi was probably mine, if we're being perfectly honest. So, neither guy wanted to commit to contracts, and I think that's the only reason they weren't in the finals.
That's actually exactly why. And then another one of the guys tied for the lead in B block was also a WWE developmental guy.
Yeah, developmental reject, more or less. It's crazy how that works.
Yes, indeed it is. So Kota Ibushi wins, which I'm thinking about my introduction to Kota Ibushi, which was Wrestle Kingdom 9, which was Shinsuke Nakamura and Kota Ibushi for the IWGP Intercontinental Championship. And now here we have Kota, who we all know is one of the top wrestlers in the world anyway. He's one step away from the top match in the promotion.
Facing a guy who he's referred to as a god in Tanahashi, too. And, that's the place where fans of his who've been watching for all these years knew he could go, but we never really knew if it would happen, and we knew he deserved it. And it's just great to see him finally get to this level.
All right, so Maddie, let's move on to the final. Actually, no, hold on. I want to bitch about something first because we were both salty about this. So I get up Saturday morning, right? And I'm really pumped for like the last day of the B block because you've got Kenny, you've got Kenny versus Cody, you've got that Naito You got that Naito versus ZSJ match. Who's going to end up in the finals? Then they're going to go for a draw because Tana and Okada have already done a draw. And so I go to NJPW World, and there on the front page, they've already got a fucking big banner image up for the final on the next day. So I already fucking know in advance that Ibushi won.
Yeah, and especially sucked for me because I was really pulling for Naito to win. I'm a total Naito guy, and to even turn on those matches and watch all the block matches after I saw that, I had very little motivation for a while, and I kind of had to pause and come back to it, and take my time to digest everything, just because I totally lost interest. It totally sucked me right out of it. Spending so much time and effort watching these matches, taking notes, preparing for these shows here, and to just have that happen and just kind of take all the momentum right out from under me. Kind of sucked.
I actually had to. I actually kind of had to talk Matt back into the game a little bit yesterday afternoon. We were both upset, but yeah, I think you were a step more upset than I was.
Yeah, because like I said, I had a horse in the race, and to know before the match even started that he wasn't going to win, that totally took me right out of it. I avoided social media pretty much all of late January, early August until I was finished watching, until I was caught up, and woke up early on weekends to watch these matches, and yeah, it just kind of sucks after all that effort to have that taken away from you. And the other thing too is they had a graphic of just the trophy to advertise the finals leading up to it. Why couldn't they have just kept that there? It just kind of sucks.
That was a little bit of a misstep on their part, so I hope somebody communicates that to them. But yeah, I was not happy about that. So anyway, moving on to the final, we'll talk about some of the other happenings from the final show. There were some things that happened, but there was only one sort of immediately important match, and that was the finals. So Hiroshi Tanahashi, the ace of the universe, taking on the Golden Star, Kota Ibushi. The winner headlines the January 4th Tokyo Dome show, presumably against Kenny Omega. But the contract does allow them to also challenge for the Intercontinental title and presumably the U.S. title as well. But one would think that whoever wins this would take on Kenny Omega. Now, things got interesting right away because, now as one might expect, Omega is the corner for Ibushi. And actually something we didn't mention for the last match, the Bucks actually came out and they were sort of in a neutral corner for both Kenny and Kota.
Yeah, interesting way to go about it. They had the Bucks had talked in their backstage before the match that they just really didn't want those guys to kill each other. That was the main reason they were out there.
So, Maddie, tell the people who cornered Tana for this match.
Yeah, it was none other than the wrestler himself, Katsuyori Shibata. Much of an unexpected twist. I thought I wouldn't expect him to be out there at all. And, obviously Tanahashi and Shibata have the history, being two of the modern day Three Musketeers along with Shinsuke Nakamura. So lots of significance there. And, just really nice to see Shibata in public and healthy. So that's always a plus.
He looks good. He actually looks really healthy, and he is training at the New Japan LA dojo.
Yeah, that's a good place for him. He's got a lot to teach people. I'm
Just
sure.
don't teach him that headbutt you did last year.
Yeah, I think that's a given.
So, what to say about this match? I could say this about a lot of matches from this tournament. This is one of the best wrestling matches I've ever seen. The intensity and the passion. What I love, and this is how I know I'm still a fan in 2018, and my I'm 41 years old. I still get chills watching this stuff.
Yeah, and as much as I bitched about being not happy, knowing that this match was going to be the final, like the quality matches from the B block last night, and the final had a B block action, and the final match here of the tournament itself, like it took me right back into it, and how can you not just commend these guys and lose your mind when you see the amount of expertise that these guys bring, and the amount of, like you said, the amount of passion. It's incredible.
So I'm hard pressed on how to talk about this match, but I can tell you the thing that stuck with me is on a side note before we get to the actual moment I want to talk about is Ibushi hitting a Bomaye, which he that's a move that he uses, but it's just interesting in this context him using a Bomaye because obviously that's Shinsuke's move, and before the ascendance of Okada, Shinsuke was Tana's biggest rival.
Yeah, and they had some awesome matchups against each other, and I kind of hope that they'll be able to reprise that sometime down the line. But in the meantime, he's Ibushi is a pretty good surrogate for Nakamura.
So in the middle of this match, one of the things that happens in a New Japan match, it's just a thing, is the strike exchange. But these two motherfuckers just started slapping the shit out of each other. Open-handed slaps. Not pulling. And they're just going back and forth. And, Ibushi took Tana off his feet at one point, right?
Mm-hmm.
And Tana gets up and hulks up. And, Tana is like a really ripped cut guy. Like when he like really flexes, he looks crazy cut. So he's like hulking up, and Ibushi is still slapping him. And Ibushi has like the best scared face. Like he's slapping the shit out of Tana. Tana's hulking up, and the whole time just backing Ibushi into a corner.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he was like, I was expecting his hair to turn blue. Tanahashi's.
He's just going to go like fucking 10th level Super Saiyan.
Yeah, he was going to go Super Saiyan God.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
I fully expected, him to have the aura around him and everything, but...
What would his power level be at that point? It's like, that's in the millions, right?
It would be like 9,000 to the, 9,000th power.
So what's funny is, my new lady has got a boy at the age where he would be into Dragon Ball. And she texted me to tell me the other day, she's like, there's a new Dragon Ball movie coming out. And I'm like, well, presumably you're talking about a cartoon, right? Because I haven't heard about a live action movie. And I'm like, a Dragon Ball movie coming out isn't that big of a deal because this is like the fucking 20th Dragon Ball movie. And so apparently, it sounds like her boy was like really excited about it, and she's like, "Yeah, apparently my source was a little bit misinformed."
Well, I think this is going to be a little bit bigger deal than the typical, like, straight to video type of ones. I think they might actually try to do like a theatrical release over here of it.
Well, so I think that that they're always like theatrical releases in Japan. Like the 20 Dragon Ball movies have been theatrical releases. Dragon Ball has reached something of a critical mass in our culture that I can totally see like a dubbed cartoon movie getting a theatrical release.
Yeah. I mean, I remember growing up, the first Pokemon movie was a pretty big deal.
Oh, dude, I actually saw that in a theater.
Yeah, me too.
Speaking of Dragon Ball, before we continue with this match, I'm sort of plotting out my next tattoo, and I've got this elaborate Dragon Ball thing planned out, but I actually do want to get a Dragon Ball tattooed on my elbow.
That'd be pretty cool.
So can you guess which Dragon Ball I would get tattooed on my elbow?
5 stars.
And why would I do the 5-star?
Because Dave Meltzer is your daddy.
Is that why?
Yeah, we'll go with that.
There's no other reason.
I don't know. What am I missing?
Which, at the beginning of the series, which Dragon Ball did Goku have?
Is that the one he had?
I'm asking you.
I thought it was the 4.
No, it's the 4-star Dragon Ball. I'm fucking with you.
Okay, I thought so.
Yeah, that was Grandpa Gohan's Dragon Ball. So anyway, I want to get the 4-star Dragon Ball on my elbow, my left elbow.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool.
I thought so too. I actually wanted to do all the Dragon Balls like down my forearm, but my tattoo artist said basically like the stars on the Dragon Ball would not look good when they were that small.
Oh yeah, that makes sense.
So let's jump back into this match here. So they do that crazy slap exchange. You think that Tana's gonna go all like Super Saiyan God. Dude, Ibushi ends up doing that standing moonsault double knee again.
Yeah, this one I thought looked even more brutal than the one against Omega. Because like I said, like Omega kind of like tensed up and braced himself for it, and this one looked like it just went straight into Tanahashi's chest with like no protection whatsoever.
So Ibushi lawn darts Tana. Tana does not cover himself at all when he hits the corner. Because a lot of times the guys will sort of like roll their head and hit it with their shoulder. Tana went fucking head first into the corner.
And this is the exact moment in the match where I'm thinking there's no possible way that Tanahashi can come back from all this damage.
So Ibushi hits the deadlift German last ride. I'm thinking match is over, right? I'm like only half awake at this point. I'm basically running on Cheez-Its and the grape flavored monster. Tana kicks out. And I'm like, yeah, Ibushi ain't winning this match. So Tana dodges the Kamigoye, right? And I thought the way that he dodged it was like really great. You don't see it that much. It was just sort of, he just like slid out of the way, but it was just such a nice counter to the move. Ibushi dodges a sling blade. And then Ibushi does the straight jacket German, right? He keeps wrist control on both arms. Turns Tana around and then goes for the Kamigoye again. And then Tana counters back with a pair of twist and shouts.
Yeah, and this was the exact moment where you knew that things were gonna really turn around.
Ibushi is fucked at this point. Tana with a dragon suplex. Ibushi kicks out at 2. Actually, you know what? I'm going to let you describe the. You're the one that takes the notes for us, so I want you to describe the finishing sequence.
Yeah. So this is quite a trio of moves that Tanahashi goes for. So he hits the high fly flow to Ibushi while Ibushi's laying on his stomach, so he hits him on the back, and then Tana turns him over, presumably to hit a high fly flow, to a prone Ibushi, but Ibushi somehow manages to get up, so he goes for the high fly cross body block, and if that wasn't enough, he has to climb up for the third time,
And
and
by the
hits
way,
the standard high fly flow version.
and
And ends
Kevin
up
Kelly is like shouting for Tana to just like fucking pin him already.
Yeah. This is one of those moments where Kevin Kelly really added to the broadcast for sure. But the level of passion that he's displaying for this match. So then the trio, the trifecta, your traditional style high fly flow, ends up picking up the victory for Tanahashi.
So there's this moment after the match where Ibushi manages to pull himself up off the mat, and then Tana is really doing sort of the alpha male thing and is up in Ibushi's face. It was really like fucking intense moment. Like Ibushi just got his ass beat, and he's backed up against the ropes. Tana's up in his face. I mean, Tana is cut anyway, but then he's got kind of got that like whole like that pump going on where he's like just like flexed and like staring him down. Tana just sort of puts his hands up and leaves the ring, and Kenny walks him out.
Yeah, I wasn't sure, whether there was going to be some kind of exchange, or whether a hug or a handshake. I think that's what Tanahashi was expecting out of that exchange, but alas, Bushi just kind of slunked away.
So we get to the celebration at the end. This is Tanahashi's third G1 win.
Yeah, shouts out to Chris Charlton too, talking about the progression of how that worked. Tanahashi winning his first G1 against Nagata, sort of a passing of the torch moment. The second one being against Nakamura, a modern peer, and then the third one being against Ibushi, somebody who's sort of a generation ahead of him.
Yeah, so we're actually going to talk about Charlton more in a minute. But yes, Charlton was modern day Mike Tenay. What I enjoyed, they're doing the celebration. Masahiro Chono, one of my OG New Japan favorites, presents the G1 flag to Tana, and they pose together. Chono is old as fuck at this point, but he's still as fucking cool as he ever was.
Yeah, it's one of those things where he still looks pretty much the same as he did when he wrestled. So he can go out there and do that, and it's gonna be easily recognizable. It's a pretty cool moment.
I feel like that the Yakuza gimmick was one of the best things that he ever did, because that's sort of like a timeless thing for him, because he just has to have the flat top and put the sunglasses on.
Yeah, easily distinguishable look, and that's not gonna really go out of style no matter what fashion trends you got going on in the modern times. So
I actually hope that for Fire Pro they release like a classic New Japan pack, so we can get like Choshu and Fujinami and Chono in there. And yes, I know that there's like 1,001 creations of them on like in the community, but I would like official versions of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with that. That would be awesome.
All right, so we got we have a ton of things to talk about coming out of this. If you guys thought the show was done now, oh no. This is gonna be like a Kirk Hammett, like the whole segment of the Metallica show where Kirk Hammett just solos on his own. You think we're done? You think I just broke into some like fucking Yuli John Roth Scorpions riff, and you think, okay, well, Kirk's finally done? No. We're about to keep going. We're gonna wear that fucking wah pedal out.
Yes, it's so necessary.
And I'd like to think that our all of our listeners get that reference, but that's probably like 1 in 15 people got that.
It's all good.
All right, so I have a list, Matt. I have things that I want to talk about. So we're just going to jump right in. So the first thing is this shit with the Tongans, man. Like, listen, we talked about this earlier. Not, it's just not me. We're both fans of God, but their whole presentation in this tournament was shitty. They wrecked too many matches. They spent the whole tournament bragging about what badasses they are instead of showing us what badasses they are. And at the end of the day, Tama and Tonga's senior citizen father still seems like more of a badass than them.
Yeah, I don't know what the payoff is going to be. Like, there's no real hint of what it's going to be, and until we get some sort of glimpse of it, I'm kind of over it.
This is not like a couple years ago when Suzuki-gun returned from Noah. Like, these are like mid-card guys doing the whole NWO thing, and it's not working.
Yeah, they really lack the credibility to make that go over.
And the thing is, it's not like Tama can't go in the ring, but when they're basically doing these shitty finishes, dude, again, to a certain extent, it's a little bit of 90s WCW, and that's not what any of us want to see.
Right. Absolutely right.
So that leads into the next point. You have anything else to add to that, by the way?
No.
Okay. Harold May, the president of New Japan, he was appearing as a character a little bit this weekend. Like, basically, he sort of ushered the Tongans out of the arena on, what was that, night 18, and then he was there at ringside on night 19 because basically the Tongans were taking on the Bucks and Skrull for the never 6-man titles, and they sort of did an impromptu title match. It wasn't supposed to be a title match, and then the Tongans ended up winning. I'm not going to go so far as to make definitive statements, but like fucking Harold May becoming a character in New Japan could possibly be enough for me to stop watching the product and honestly for me to end this podcast.
It's been pretty low key so far. As long as he's more Jack Tunney than he is Vince McMahon, then we'll be okay.
Like, honestly, if he can help New Japan continue to grow and be successful, and we get more English language product, awesome. But dude, I do not want to see a fucking on-screen fucking authority figure in New Japan. I don't want to see, like William Regal is a pretty good authority figure in NXT and has been for a while. But you don't need a fucking on-screen authority figure.
No, you really don't. They haven't had one in New Japan for the longest time, and things have run just fine. So
I don't want it. We don't need it. And if there's a thing, like I said, this would fucking kind of railroad the product for me.
I wouldn't take it to that extent, but I'd certainly prefer that it not be the case.
I am being intentionally ridiculous.
Okay.
Just for the sake of a point. The announce team, I wanted to talk about this. Sort of like overall, the announce team did an amazing job. Kevin Kelly was, consistent throughout. He brought what Wade Keller would call a sports-like feel to all the proceedings throughout the whole thing. Rocky Romero was sort of continually improving throughout the throughout the tournament. Rocky is a little goofy, but ultimately I felt like he added. And then, dude, Chris Charlton. I don't know. I mean, I want to, I want to know what you think about this.
He's a wealth of knowledge. He really added to the stories in a lot of ways. He's somebody who clearly has been watching for a long time, clearly has been paying very close attention to the way these stories have been told, and just seamlessly picks up the narrative, as far as the match goes, and it really illuminates the audience as to what exactly they're saying here and what's the significance of it.
And that, dude, that is so important. Obviously, like, Kevin Kelly and Rocky provide perspective, but dude, Chris Charlton, who wrote the book Lion's Pride, there's just a level of, put it this way, it's like the level of information that we were trying to provide when we first started the show, talking about like Inoki and Fujinami and Choshu and all those guys, right? And then, Charlton's bringing that during the broadcast.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's clearly he comes with stats, he comes with research every time. I don't know how much of that is specific prep and how much of that is just his general knowledge because he's been exposed to this stuff for such a long time, but whatever he's doing, it's really working.
So a couple questions for you. First of all, how do you feel about overall Rocky's development as a color commentator, and then specifically, how do you feel he developed over the course of the tournament?
I think he started out pretty good. He didn't detract from anything, so that's a sign of somebody who's doing at least a decent job. But by the end of it, he was really on point and really seemed comfortable, and he again sort of knew his role and just he added when he could, and he mostly just I felt like he did a good job of staying out of Kevin Kelly's way. I feel like so much of what Callis did was like really intrusive a lot of times, and just kind of detracted, and just the fact that Rocky didn't do that is a huge plus.
Yeah, that actually was going to be my next thing. How do you feel about the absence of Callis during most of the tournament? Because there's been moments over the past year where I felt like, Callis was really adding to the product. But the truth is that, and I will continue to insist this, and I'm sure Callis would just call us a couple of fucking marks on Twitter or whatever. He detracts from the product because he's busy getting himself over. And I actually don't doubt for a second that his presence on the New Japan broadcasts led to him getting his current role as an executive vice president at Impact Wrestling.
Yeah, and that's probably a more appropriate use of his skills, and a more probably a more fulfilling thing for him to do. I'm sure that he prefers to be in charge of talent and things like that, as opposed to just sitting there and like you said, putting himself over instead of calling a match.
Yeah, instead of him being the Jesse Ventura cross Bobby Heenan calling a Ric Flair match, But I have not started watching Impact. I actually don't plan on getting to Impact anytime soon, just because where the fuck am I going to find the time? But even though the ratings have not started showing it yet, for everything I hear, Impact is actually a phenomenal product right now.
Yeah, that's good for them. Any successful territory that's going to push the cause of pro wrestling is ultimately a positive. So, good for them.
For the men and women to have another viable place to go and work is is really important too. We're obviously not in a situation where anybody can offer the same contracts that WWE does, but I think post death of WCW, it's been shown that WWE not having competition is not a good thing for the business.
Yeah, that's been evident since about 2001, 2002.
Yeah, agreed. So one last thing on the announced team. And this is I think this is an interesting and important topic. As New Japan continues to do its international expansion, which, obviously there's to an extent it's happening in Mexico, but let's just generally say the international expansion is U.S., Canada, U.K., Australia, and New Zealand. How important do you think Kevin Kelly is to New Japan's international expansion efforts?
Man, I think he's invaluable. Um, he's a straight man. He's not going to do anything goofy. He's not going to, um, take away. He's not going to trivialize anything. He treats it all with gravity. He treats it all like it's important, and that's the best thing you can do.
So I'll let you have a sort of a response to these statements I'm about to make here in a minute. I think Kevin Kelly is the best broadcaster in professional wrestling right now. At least English, because I can't tell you how good the Japanese or Mexican or German guys are. I think Kevin Kelly is the best English language commentator in wrestling right now. Not only that, this is actually a little bit of a rant I want to get on. Obviously, I've kind of talked with you and probably on the show about how JR has not been good, and I kind of cut him a little bit of slack for the G1 in San Francisco show because, well, he nearly got killed, and that can explain him getting salty. But dude, JR does not seem to give a flying fuck about the product. He's not invested about it. He shit talks the product while on the air. And then on top of that, his color commentator has developed a really shitty attitude about the product too, which Josh Barnett, which didn't happen when Barnett worked with Mauro Ranallo on the New Japan product. And listen, I have been a very, very big Josh Barnett fan for a very, very long time. But seeing his recent tweets, and I get it that it could be a worker working, but he's talking about he's showing a video of himself from a match several years ago, and talking about that this is, talking about his influence from Inoki and how this is real strong style. And I've heard him say recently that he doesn't recognize this strong style in New Japan right now, and it's like, dude, you are paid to be a fucking advocate for this product. Don't sit there and fucking shit talk it. All the issues that I have with WWE aside, can you imagine Corey Graves sitting there shit talking WWE and being like, well, this isn't what I think of as pro wrestling?
Yeah, it's confusing. I don't know why he's got to put his need to be like this hyper aggressive tough guy over his job.
Because, by the way, if you listen to the early episodes of New Japan on Access, like him and Mauro together, Barnett was super enthusiastic about the product.
Yeah, Barnett and Mauro had great chemistry. I thought at the time that they were the best commentary team in all of wrestling, and that was bar none for sure.
So yeah, and unfortunately, that the Access show is a way that a lot of people are going to come across New Japan that aren't wrestling fans on the same level that we are, and I'm actually concerned that the attitude that JR and Barnett show towards the product could do more harm than good. And I mean, I followed JR long enough to know that if he was presented with this criticism, he would just sort of grumble and grouse and make excuses and then block you on Twitter. But it's a fucking problem, dude.
Yeah, it's gonna turn people off, no question, and that's obviously not what they want.
So anyway, to wrap this up, dude, the commentary I think on this tournament was stellar. Kevin Kelly, who is again, dude, was a guy that 20 years ago The Rock was making fun of for having never eaten pie before, and he's still like a total straight man. But again, dude, he is the best fucking commentator in wrestling right now.
Yeah, he's been really really enthusiastic, and I think that's probably the best thing that he adds to it. His outrage at Jay White when he screws around in front of the table, the way that he calls the finishes of these matches,
When he calls the Destino.
Yeah, he extends that last syllable, sustains that last syllable for about 15 seconds probably every time.
And if it's so much about a wrestling product is the commentary, and just imagine if Michael Cole was allowed to show both enthusiasm and outrage for what was happening on the screen.
Yeah, I mean that would change everything.
Because by the way, it was the Tokyo show where Brock Lesnar was wrestling there, but it was like they had like a big like Kevin Owens and Finn Balor match there, and Michael Cole called the match, and it was very clear that he didn't have anybody on his headset telling him what to call. Michael Cole is a perfectly good wrestling commentator when he has the opportunity to do so, but he does not have the opportunity to do so because he's too busy being a fucking corporate pitchman.
Yeah, and if that's what the powers that be think he should be doing, then that's really unfortunate for him.
So I'm going to get up on my soapbox.
It's a waste of his talents.
I'm going to get up on my soapbox again for a second before we move on to my next thing I want to discuss. Here's what my problem with WWE has been for the longest time. This is basically since like the post WCW days and like them going public. And I'm not going to sit here and list my credentials on air because I don't need to, but I'm actually like a fairly successful businessman myself, and have worked in some fairly like high level, like C-suite type levels. And I've been involved in building successful businesses, worked with marketing agencies, worked with big brands. I've got actually a lot of experience under my belt. And at the end of the day, I am a software engineer at my core, but I have a ton of business experience. So one of the things that bothers me about what WWE does is they haven't figured out how to communicate in a business-to-business way versus communicating to their fans and customers. Like I remember when they launched when they did the SmackDown Raw split, however many years ago, and they did this whole segment with Linda McMahon talking about it, and she's referring to it as a brand separation. And even then, me like not knowing shit about shit, I'm like, this sounds like a press release, a marketing release. Why are you talking to your fans this way? Dude, if you want to refer to it as sports entertainment with your investors and with, other media people, great. But to your fans, that's fucking professional wrestling.
Yeah, it is. It's bizarre, and the culture of like the cult speak and everything, it really all feeds into that.
And again, it's fine when you're doing like the communicating to your investors or communicating to business partners, but that's. And this is the thing about WWE. They have brought people into outside, but the people that they bring in from the outside, they basically like fucking brainwash. So what happens? You've got all these people that have never worked anywhere else. They have never worked anywhere else. They don't get. There's a lot of things that they don't fucking get, honestly. And on top of that, their product ostensibly is a simulated sport, and there's no fucking sports fans there. They don't know how to tell a sports story, and the sports story is like the easiest fucking story to tell.
It really is. And yeah, I can't imagine why they don't grasp that. It's just got to be the vision of the one man on top.
Well, I mean, part of it is Vince, but dude, I would almost guarantee that Hunter has never watched a football game in his life.
Yeah, probably not.
Like, Hunter has listened to Metallica and lifted weights, and that's about it.
Yeah, that sounds pretty accurate.
And then made a couple babies with his billionaire princess wife.
Yeah, more power to him.
Okay, so moving on, I'm back down off of my soapbox. We're more than two. This actually, Matt. This is probably going to be our longest episode ever. I'm just throwing that out there.
Oh my lord,
we're getting there already. Best matches of the tournament.
I mean, it's got to be the Ishii stuff, right?
So what we're talking. So we're talking Ishii Omega, Ishii Ibushi, Ishii Goto.
Yeah.
What about Omega Naito, Omega Ibushi, Tana Okada, and Tana Ibushi? I mean, dude, it's fucking hard to pick, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Naito Ibushi I would throw in there. The unenviable task of following up Ishii and Omega, but still did a great job.
So pick one. Pick one match.
One match. Yikes.
You're on the spot. You have to pick one. If you don't pick one, I'm gonna end the show tonight.
Probably that B Block final. Just because everything leading into it, story wise, all the implications, all the way around.
I hear you, and I'm close to being with you, but I'm going to go with Ishii Omega. It was just so intense and so physical, and I don't know that I've ever seen anybody beat Kenny Omega's ass like that.
Yeah, then it was hard not to go with that one, but yeah, I just feel like that that match really drew me in with everything.
And
their backstory.
Yeah, and it's worth noting. I just want to throw this out there because you got to think about things as both as a sort of a, sort of like a informed wrestling fan, and then think about it as too as sort of like a emotional, invested in the moment wrestling fan. Kenny Omega is presented as is like undisputably the best wrestler in the world, right? That's definitely how you listen to Kevin Kelly talk about him, and this is one of the reasons. Going back to an earlier topic, this is one of the reasons I love Kevin Kelly is like he's presenting Kenny Omega as the best athlete in the world. This is like you go back 30 years ago to WWF and listen to them talk about let's call it, 35, 35 years ago. Listen to them talk about Hulk Hogan. They're presenting Hulk Hogan as the best professional athlete in all of the world. It just so happens that he's a professional wrestler. This is the trade that he's chosen, but no, he's the best professional wrestler in the world. Dusty Rhodes presented himself as the biggest box office draw in the world. That basically he was like the next Muhammad Ali. It was a little ridiculous, but dude, it's fucking Dusty, and that's how he chose to book himself. And that's one of the things that I like about New Japan right now is that Kenny Omega is presented as the best fucking wrestler in the world. It's not a question. And then Tomohiro Ishii beat his fucking ass bloody.
Yeah, that was something else.
So that's what I'm going with for my best match of the tournament. But that leads me into the next question, and I think this one is obvious, and I suspect that we'll agree, but I'm willing to listen to dissension. Who is the MVP of this tournament?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to argue against Ishii, but if I had to, I would probably go with Ibushi. Just as far as, it really, going into the final, it really felt like it was his year. Much of the tournament really felt like it was his year as far as, the people he was able to beat on his way to the finals.
So, I hear you. Ibushi had an amazing tournament, and it's actually hard to imagine him coming out of this as a bigger star, because Ibushi's fucking hugely over, but I feel like he's a bigger star now.
Yeah, he's right on the cusp of that top tier.
But I'm gonna have to go ahead and go with Ishii as the MVP of this tournament. He is, fuck, dude. I mean, he's one of the best wrestlers in the world. I feel like he's fighting spirit. He's strong style personified. And this is worth noting, a personal thing. You're talking to a guy that has fighting spirit, the kanji for fighting spirit tattooed on his back in big fucking bold script. So when I say somebody is the personification of fighting spirit, that's actually kind of a big deal for me. I also want to give a nod to Tanahashi as well. He finished with 15 points in the tournament, which is a big deal. And this was, the story being told here of sort of legend making one last run. This is almost like I'm trying to think of a good sports example. I don't know. Maybe this is like Jordan Pippin's last run at a title. The year before Jordan retired the second time.
Yeah, that's a good one, I think.
And you think about you remember that Eastern Conference Championship against the Pacers. You've got like the Bulls are like completely exhausted, like MJ's falling apart, and they still keep it together long enough to go to the finals and beat the Jazz for the second year in a row. Or I don't know. I'm not going to keep making sports analogies tonight. But yeah, I'm going to give it to Ishii, and that's not an original thought of mine because that's what a lot of people are saying. But I want to give a big nod to Tana, who, like I said, the story that they're telling here is one more run, which leads me actually into the next thing I want to talk about. And you and I actually have not really discussed this before. So I'm really curious to know what you think. Where do you think Tana's place is in the pro wrestling pantheon?
I mean, he's got to be, when you think about where New Japan was when he really made his ascent and where it is now, for that alone, he really deserves, all the praise you can heap on him, really, as far as being one of the best all time.
So it's interesting. I actually saw some people on Twitter tweeting Meltzer and talking about, kind of compared it to like Cena hanging on to the main event spot in WWE. This is like Cena beating Gargano to go to the WrestleMania main event. And it's wrong for whatever millions of reasons, especially because this just felt like Tana's time. But fuck, dude, let me be blunt. New Japan has grown under Tanahashi, and while WWE's financial fortunes have grown over the last like decade and a half, their popularity has reduced during that time. I don't know why the financial fortunes are inverse, but I mean, you saw an unprecedented drop in television ratings during Cena's reign as the top guy.
Yeah. Seemed like the longer he was on top, yeah, it didn't bode well. And Tanahashi's been the exact opposite of that in every way.
So I've pretty openly recently, if I haven't said this on the show, I've definitely said this to like wrestling friends. I think Okada's the best ever. But Okada's only 30, so that's like assuming a bunch of stuff, and that can change. I mean, you talk about the best wrestlers ever. You're going to talk. Ric Flair is in there right away, right? And I'm gonna try to more focus on guys in my lifetime because I can only say so much about like the Funks or the Briscoes or Kaniski or Luthez, right? Because I wasn't around for any of it. So I want to focus on guys in my lifetime. Ric Flair is you can easily put him on top. Steve Austin, a really big deal for a short period of time, but like a really big deal and legit one of the best ever. Even though his run on top was not him at his best form, but I mean it's pretty apparent from the day one that Steve was meant to be a big guy. Jumping over to Japan. Some of the guys in All Japan, particularly Mitsuharu Misawa and Kenta Kobashi, are, indisputably two of the best ever. It's hard to say who else to throw into that list. But, I mean, dude, to me, Tana is up there with all those guys. I mean, look, charisma, in-ring ability, drawing ability, longevity. Does he trump Flair? I mean, here's the thing about Flair. This is the thing to keep in mind with Flair is that Flair was having amazing matches night in and night out versus his opponents. Like you probably can't even count the number of amazing matches he must have had with like Ricky Steamboat or Barry Windham or whomever. But that being said, I would bet that Tanahashi's best of his best matches would trump Ric Flair's best matches. But the businesses between, Ric Flair's heyday and Tanahashi's heyday are different,
Yeah, it's not even really comparable, the way that the promotions have been structured. You think of Flair's run in Crockett primarily. It was mostly just squash matches and angles, and maybe a handful of really big matches throughout the year.
Well, here's the thing. Sorry to interrupt. Here's the thing to keep in mind. Obviously, if you saw the TV, and it's not like Flair wrestled a ton on TV because he didn't. And if you go back and watch the old Crockett shows, the reason you want to watch those old Crockett shows are for the amazing interviews. But Flair's out doing house shows every night. And again, he's working with guys. Again, I can't even imagine the number of matches that him and Steamboat must have had because they feuded from like way back when. Or again, a guy like Barry Windham. There's just so many guys that Flair would have feuded with. And again, Flair is this world touring NWA champion would have done it against everybody. And we talked about last year when we kind of before we put the show on hiatus, we talked about Flair versus Steamboat series from '89 that led into the Flair versus Funk series. When Flair was given a stage with the right opponent, I mean, he put on, what at the time were the best wrestling matches ever. But like I said, the difference is that Flair did it more often, more consistently, but his highs were not as high as Tanahashi's.
Yeah, that's really true. And yeah, it's such an apples and oranges kind of thing. it's hard to really make the comparison.
Yeah,
The opponents were vastly different. The structure of the business and what the goal of the business was so much different. So it's really hard to make that comparison.
yeah. I mean, you were back then. You had TV to sell tickets to live events that may or may not end up being on TV. Now it's New Japan wants to sell tickets, but they also want to sell. Well, yeah, actually, New Japan wants to sell tickets and merch. Whereas WWE has their TV contract and they want network subscriptions. It is a very different business. You know, Tanahashi may end up having a match now and again against, let's say, Fale or whatever. But there was like a Clash of the Champions that Ric Flair headlined against Junkyard Dog. And this is like, Junkyard Dog was never a good wrestler, but this was JYD at like his fat, coke-headed worst. That's the stuff that Flair had to deal with. Just sort of where I'm going with that is that it's like, is that Tana's up there, and you have to consider his longevity, and then you compare them to, let's say, Kobashi is another guy that you could put up there, and maybe Kobashi's better than any of them, but his career didn't last as long. I mean, look at where Tana's age, and you can tell that he's at the end, but he's probably got one last run in him as well.
Yeah, and it's a good story to tell. I'm excited to see how this goes at the Dome.
So that actually let's move that into the next topic. So I'm going down the list that we have here. Actually, we'll talk about this real quick, and then we'll get into the rest of our 2018 prediction. Okada and Gedo split earlier today, or I guess yesterday.
Yeah, it's been officially announced. Yeah, it's interesting how that bodes for Chaos, because Okada's obviously been their leader, and Geto's been indispensable as far as coaching Okada throughout all of this, and
he's been the playmaker to the rainmaker.
Yeah, it's just it's bizarre. You have the whole Jay White thing, challenging for that leadership role, and it's kind of interesting. You had like Yoshihashi talking about moving on to other things. Goto's kind of hinted at it as well. Seems like a lot of discontent among the ranks.
So let me throw out a prediction. What do you think about a heel Gedo forming a new faction with Jay White and Chaos basically dissolving?
It's a possibility. There's also been hints that like Tanahashi might link up with a guy like a Yoshihashi. So we'll see how.
Hangman Page.
Yeah, of all people, yeah, it's kind of interesting. So we can see how that works out as well.
I mean, Hangman is obviously buddies with the the elite guys, but it could do some Hangman some good to not be a lower tier guy in Bullet Club.
Yeah, he's got his own identity to carve out for sure.
So so let's move on to the predictions for the rest of this year, and then then into I basically the next year in wrestling. So I got a few questions for you, and let's sort of just going to sort of run down a list here. Does Tana keep the briefcase?
Yes.
Okay, because here's my thought is that he has not beaten Okada in years at this point, and the briefcase always gets defended between the finish of the G1 and the Tokyo Dome. It get defended once, maybe even twice. I don't think it'll be 3 times. Okada has, a legit stance to challenge for it, as does Jay White. And it's interesting in that, number one, that nobody has ever won the briefcase from the G1 winner. And the G1 winner has not beaten the champion at the Tokyo Dome since like Well, first of all, nobody's ever beat the G1 winner for the suitcase, and I don't think the G1 winner has won at Wrestle Kingdom since Wrestle Kingdom 5. Something has to give eventually.
Yeah. I don't see Jay White beating Tanahashi, and as far as Okada, I don't know. I don't know if if that would be the type of thing that would make Okada, flip back to a different mode. Maybe he's just been so out of it and so bizarre since he lost the title that he, can't focus enough to beat Tanahashi.
Okay, so does Omega keep the title between now and the Tokyo Dome?
I think so, yeah.
So at a minimum, Omega is going to face Ishii. That's been made clear, especially the show yesterday.
Yeah.
Ishii's made it clear that he wants a shot at that title, and they honestly should do that show on the in Long Beach to give that a big title match, but that could even happen on the Destruction shows.
Yeah, it'd be a quick turnaround, but I wouldn't be opposed to it.
And you think Omega comes out of that with his championship intact?
Yeah.
Do you do Omega and Ibushi again before the Tokyo Dome?
They were really weird about it during their post match press conference. I don't know if it would happen or not.
Okay. As I feel like it has to happen again at it seems like a natural to happen, but it's hard telling. And Omega does need to have opponents. He needs to have like 2, maybe 3 matches between now and the Tokyo Dome.
Yeah, they've practically said that, unless they're forced into doing it again, it's probably not going to happen again. That was the way they made it sound.
How about Omega versus Yano?
How about it? Can it be like a lumberjack match to keep the Tongans out?
They don't really do gimmick matches in Japan.
I would just, be something funny. That would be the Yano thing to do.
Yeah, it would need to be like some goofy ass Yano match.
Yeah, I'd be down with that though.
Actually, I think what I thought and sort of hoped out of when the Tongans jumped, the rest of the Bullet Club guys at the G1 special. I was hoping that was going to build up to like a cage match between Kenny and Tama, because I would almost bet New Japan's never done a cage match, but after how the G1's gone, that sort of dampened my enthusiasm for that.
Yeah, totally.
So, but you feel like Omega is going to have the title going into Wrestle Kingdom?
Yeah, I'm pretty confident about that.
Which is, we talked about this, recently. Not a lot of Gaijin have that title going into Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah, well, there's not a lot of Gaijin like Omega, who are really fluent in Japanese and really kind of been accepted by the culture. So that's kind of broken the mold,
Agreed. So there was an interesting angle that popped up during the G1 final show. Happened in the tag match between David Finlay and Juice Robinson against Cody and Hangman Page. Why don't you talk about the ending of that a little bit?
I must have missed this. I watched the match itself, but I must have maybe skipped the angle itself. So
You didn't see the promo that Cody cut on Juice?
No, I did not.
Yeah, Cody basically called Juice like a bad impersonation of Kairi Sane.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and basically Cody had like the U.S. title thrown over his shoulder.
Damn. Them's fighting words.
And that's like a message for the U.S. audience, because the Japanese audience doesn't know who Kairi Sane is. They know who Kairi Hojo is. They don't know who Kairi Sane is.
Right.
So I am guessing at the next U.S. show it is going to be Cody versus Juice for the U.S. title. And you've still got Zack Sabre Jr. and basically every fucking buddy else on the planet lined up for a shot at that title.
Right. Be a long fall for Juice Robinson.
Yeah, it's going to be, and I think they seem intent on continuing to book him as an underdog, but at a certain point, your champion can't be an underdog.
Right. Yeah, therein lies the problem.
So, two more topics, and we're going to go ahead and call this a show. After the new year, when the New Japan contracts end, who is going to WWE? And as sort of an addendum to that, who is leaving WWE and coming back to New Japan?
Yikes. I tend to think that that's not going to be the big shakeup that a lot of people are predicting. I don't think that WWE is going to break the bank for Omega and the Bucks. I just don't see it happening. I don't see it being worth it for them. And then as far as otherwise, I don't see Daniel Bryan leaving either. I think he's pretty well, in the ranks with the Total Divas thing, the Total Bellas thing. He's kind of invested beyond just being a wrestler at this point.
So, so I think that, let's call them the big four. I think that the Bucks and Cody and Kenny are all going to stay. Kenny is very dedicated to Japanese culture. I think being the top guy in New Japan is a really, really big deal for him, and he lives in Japan. Dude, the Bucks are tag team wrestlers, and it's not a good way to describe it, but they're a little quirky. They're a little gimmicky, but they're great wrestlers, so I don't think I'm diminishing that one bit. And tag team wrestling isn't really a thing in WWE, and not in any positive way. And all you need to do is look at how WWE has handled broken Matt Hardy to know how they would handle the Young Bucks. And, dude, why the fuck would Cody go back, And I kind of what you said, I don't think that WWE is going to blow up their salary structure to bring anybody in.
Yeah, it seems like it would be really problematic for them to do that.
I could totally see those Skrull and Hangman, a couple of guys like that going though.
Yeah, that's fair. I didn't really think of them in that same group, but it's not beyond the realm of possibility.
I actually think that makes it like quite a bit of sense for everybody involved there. I could also see I can't see AJ going back to Japan. AJ is basically the top guy in WWE as far as I'm concerned. He's got to be making a ton of money, and I don't think he wants to travel to Japan. New Japan apparently wants Shinsuke back, and I don't know what the Good Brothers are thinking, but you could almost imagine them going back and allying with the Tongans or something.
Yeah, that'd be a huge wave for them to come back. That'd be a great way to reintroduce them, and yeah, I think that the Nakamura would be really great to have back as well.
Okay, so I got one more question. I've actually got a bonus question after the next question, but then we're going to wrap it up. Give me your way too early prediction for G129.
There's only one way I can go with this. It's got to be Naito.
I knew you were going to say that. I have a hard time disagreeing. I think Jay White is probably still one more year off from winning it. At a certain point, you think if Naito's going to win it, you got to put the belt on him. I don't think Naito's going to get the belt. I think Naito's just a cool guy, but I just don't see him having the top belt. And I think actually a lot of fans are going to have to get used to that. I'm going to go ahead and say Okada wins the next G1.
Yeah, that's fair too. That would kind of be his redemption song.
Okay. So I don't want to. We don't need to do a full explanation on what happens afterwards, but on the spot, Matt, who wins the Tokyo Dome main event?
Ooh, thinking Omega. That's my gut.
Okay. I'm going with Tanahashi.
Okay.
All right, Maddie, plug your stuff.
Yeah. Twitter is at albino Buddha, ALBINO_BUDDHA. Instagram is Thompson MR90, and Facebook is facebook.com/madd.matt.t. Mad Matt T.
So you can find me on Twitter at the Zork. That is spelled with a 0, not an O. Look in the show notes, and you can get all these links. You can find us at flying.gaijin.bombcast.com, at FG on Twitter, Flying Gaijin Bombcast on Facebook. Also, go check out my band Northern Crown. We've got a new album coming out in 2 months, and you're going to start seeing a lot of stuff about it coming this week. Thank you for tuning in, everybody. And we will be back next week for our Dog Days of G1 Summer Special. Until then, peace out.